Strong Dads wants to thank Quality Auto Mart for joining us as a sponsor. Quality Auto Mart was born in 1985. They are owned and operated by Mark and Nancy Repke. Quality Auto Mart provides all the services, repairs, and maintenance for your vehicle's needs with a 3-year auto parts and labor warranty. They offer complimentary vehicle safety inspection and estimates. Also, they offer a shuttle service and the 4th oil change is always on them. They are located at 7307 on State Road 46 in Batesville, Indiana. Make sure you give them a call at 812-934-2301.
Welcome to Strong Dads. This is Merle Hutchinson being joined by Kyle Crawford for another great show.
Another great show.
Who are you today, right? Who are you anyway? Tell me who you are.
Well, back in the
You are
year,
one messed up dude is
back
who
in the
you
year
are.
of 1988, I was born.
Who are you? Man, we're going to have a good show today
I think so,
because
too.
I think we're going to probably I think we're going to pick some scabs on some people. We're going to open up some wounds.
All right.
And as you and I were talking beforehand, I'm kind of going through some of this process myself, and I'm I'm opening up some old wounds in a process that I'm going through. And I'm like, well, yeah, this isn't really that much fun. This kind of sucks.
Yeah, what's this all about? What's this all about?
Today we're going to talk about just our identity and how that actually then feeds into our experiences, and then how experiences feed into our identity. And so it's kind of this weird sort of cycle thing, but how over time you can get yourself into a really great place in life, or you can get yourself down into a not so good place. And so identity means a lot. And so that word's been thrown around a lot over the last, I'd say, at least 5 years that I'm aware of. Everything from identity politics and all this stuff. And people want to belong to something, right? They want to have a team. I want to have a jersey. I want to think that I'm valuable to somebody or something, bigger than me. So, and I think all of that is just part of. It's not necessarily bad, right? It's not bad to want to identify. It's just, what are you identifying to, and how did you come to that, and is that going to be a good, fruitful thing for you and for your family and all that stuff? So anyway, what do you identify as? What?
Wow.
I think a unicorn. You look like a unicorn to me.
I'm one of a kind. One of a kind. No, Merle, I think the concept of identifying, who you are, I think it's something from a very young age. That's something we talk, about this idea of boys trying to figure out who the heck they are, right?
Man, yeah.
And then I think as you get older, hopefully at some point you've kind of figured out who you are, your identity. But man, I think it's a work in progress. There's this continual idea of just trying to figure out, try and redefine, try and fine tune some of what you identify as and who you identify with. So I think this idea of identifying, and your identity, I think is hopefully something that all you guys can relate to as we kind of dive into this topic.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. You don't have to get stuck for a lifetime, right? You do everything from age and experiences. All these things kind of cause this morphine, and people get stuck sometimes and feel like this is where we are. And sometimes maybe to the positive or the negative, like the old guy who was a heck of a athlete in high school, and now he's 50 years old and he still thinks he's a heck of an athlete in high school. And you're like, dude, you're not even on a team and you're 50, and he lives his glory days on and on and on, and everybody knows oh, Joe's here. We're going to hear about the championship back in 1973.
Yeah, that sounds like a good old country song there.
Yeah.
I think there probably is a country song about that.
All right, let's thank our sponsors. Let's get rolling.
I like it. Strong Dads, we would like to thank Quality Auto Mart for coming alongside of us. Really do appreciate Mark and Nancy for sponsoring us, continue to allow us to do this show. So for sure, check them out. It's Quality Auto Marts down in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Sorry,
all right.
Just kidding, not Lawrenceburg.
That would be, you screwed that one up.
Batesville,
You should
Indiana.
identify as a very bad ad reader.
Batesville, Indiana. Thank you so much for them.
Gotcha. All right. I also want to thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions for all your landscaping and home decor needs. Check out Casey's Outdoor Solutions, especially we have as we're recording this, the fall season's coming on. This is a great time to do some of your landscape work, change the season of the house a little bit. So go down and check out Casey's outside of Lawrenceburg.
That one is
a Lawrenceburg one. We'll check that one out. All right, let's get in because we got a lot here today. So let's talk about like your identity. So your identity is really composed of a lot of different things, all right? The successes that you've had in your life, the failures that you've had in your life, they all kind of start to come together and you start to get a picture of like, well, I guess this is who I am. But there are some undertones that will be in that this is who I am. And here's a few of them. And these are things that I kind of think of to the positive, really. Like if I were to say these about myself, I wouldn't think of these as a negative. I'd be like, yeah, that's who I am. Are you a winner? I mean, well, yeah, that's I'd prefer to be on that side of the column. All right.
Yep.
How about, in your world, a risk taker?
Yeah.
You're a fireman. Okay. Like, is it good to be a risk taker in your world?
Yeah.
Yeah, you better be at some level, right?
See, the funny thing is I think this idea of being a risk taker, I think this is what is, in my opinion, when it comes to identity, I think this is where a drastic difference, not all the time, very generalized statement here, but where the difference is between men and women, because I think a lot of women think this idea of risk taking is dangerous,
right?
And is bold, and sometimes puts you in a bad place. But I know for me, my belief is, I think risk taking is a good thing, is a positive thing to identify yourself as.
The nature of it, but you have to then also, you got to know how to buffer it, right?
Sure.
Like if you're a gambler and you're taking your family's money and you're, so then it gets reckless. So yeah, but in general, because I think as a man, if you're afraid to get off the couch to go for the hunt, most of us men would look at other men and go, dude, I could get hurt or it could be uncomfortable. It's like, yeah. And your point? So I think in general, us men, we like that. How about this? Like, are you a father? Do you identify as father?
Yep.
Yeah. And I think, obviously this is Strong Dad's podcast, right? And so we kind of think this is a big deal.
Yep, absolutely.
And we kind of believe that this is really the core of everything we're about, from in our home to even out in our culture, that this is one place where us as men, are you a father? And right away, you have to separate. Well, what does that mean? Are you a sperm donor and you created a child, or are you a father? Are you actually fathering?
Present,
yeah.
What about this? Along with being, I think the best way to be a good father is to be a good husband. Are you? Is that something that you identify in the sense of, to me, this whole idea of identifying, if someone says, "Who are you?" and you start rattling stuff off, these are the kind of those things like, oh, I'm a father, I'm a husband, the other one, are you a good provider? Do you, we've done whole shows on this idea of providing for your family. This is a big one. Again, if someone says, who are you? Would you say I'm a believer in Christ? Is that something you identify as? Is that something that you find to be truth in your life, that other people should be able to see that? So I think a lot of those questions we just asked are definitely more of the positive spin on your identity. And kind of as we were talking about, this show a little bit, there's a flip side of that then. There's a second kind of part of that, and these are the ones, hopefully we'll kind of work through these a little bit, but there are some things that could be a negative mindset mindset in the sense of things you identify at or as, and the first one is, do you identify, before we're talking about are you a winner, the flip side of that is, do you identify as a loser? Do you think that in a lot of parts of your life that you just continue to fail, that you're not getting ahead, and you're continuing to kind of have almost that loser mentality? There's a lot of people out there who deal with drug addiction. Is that something you identify as a drug addict? Is that something that is plaguing you? You're currently the season in your life that you're in this, where the drugs kind of have a hold of you.
Yeah. Gosh, yeah. The idea here, so the experiences, or maybe what somebody said about us. Yeah. My dad always said I couldn't amount to anything, and so right away, even if I didn't have experiences, I had somebody feeding that to me, and so I start to have. I don't necessarily maybe think that it's always that you'd call yourself a loser, but your mindset is one of, nothing will ever work out for me. So, am I lazy? Am I criminal? When I work with kids, And you get kids who have repeat patterns to get in trouble, right? Like when I worked in the school, and it's like, oh, wow, okay, this is the fourth time this week little Johnny's been down to my office. And so, if that continues to happen, you'll say, okay, so like what's going on? What's in your head? And you will get kids, boys primarily, you'll say, I'm just a bad kid. And, when they start to identify as that, it almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy with them versus, no, you did a bad thing. Yeah. All right, what can we do to make sure we put some safeguards up so that we don't go continuing the bad things? But we're not going to generalize this to the idea that you're a bad kid.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, Merle, kind of explain this next statement. You got bold here. I think this is kind of hopefully going to be kind of kickstart really this conversation.
Yeah, so your identity is the sum of your thoughts and your beliefs about yourself. So you have thoughts, you have beliefs, and those are generated. Thoughts and beliefs come together from your experiences. If I say I'm a good baseball player, it's because I've had something that fed that. You don't come out of the womb and say, I'm a good baseball player. You don't come out of the womb that way, but you've either had coaches tell you that, parents tell you that, and then you've had then things that will double down and solidify it. Yeah, like I lead the team in hitting or whatever, and so it's this culmination of thoughts and beliefs that come from experiences and influences from other people. And this is not something that, a 2 or 3 year old does not really have this identity at this point in their mind, but we, the experience of the environment, the people influence and start to begin to build that identity. All right. And and there's other components that we're going to get into, the genetic factors and stuff like that. Right. Yep. But so the question might be then like, well, what comes first? Like, do I have this identity and then it creates my experiences? So I call myself a good baseball player, and so I naturally start playing good ball. Or did I have good experiences and it made me say, hey, I'm a good baseball player? Okay. Yeah. And so really they are both. Okay. They work in a cycle together. One will feed the other. And when we have mixed identities, like I call myself a good baseball player, and every time I go on the field, I screw up. Right. Then we have conflict. We have internal conflict, and that's when things start to get a little bit messy. Yeah. Okay.
Just kind of using my personal experience in the fire world, this is something that I see a lot of. I do work for a very busy city. We get to experience and we get exposed to a lot of fires. Just the nature of where I work at, and I can think of multiple guys that I work with that, and not saying that they're not, but in their minds they identify as a really good fireman solely because of where they work at and the experiences we get to have.
The team they belong to.
Yeah, exactly. This would be no different if you play for the Yankees.
Right.
And you think you're a heck of a baseball player because you play for the Yankees, but yet you do nothing to contribute to actually that identifying factor of I'm a good fireman, right? You just sit on the couch every day. You don't attend trainings. You don't want to do things that better yourself. You're the person, when you do show up on fires, you do make mistakes, and mistakes happen, but it's then afterwards you do nothing to try and make those mistakes, don't repeat the same mistakes. So, I think this is spot on in the sense of, that your identity should not, or in a way needs to be kind of adjusted to the sense of your identity can't be solely based off of your experience. There has to be kind of a balancing act of knowing that, okay, I do work for whatever company and we provide a heck of a service, but I can't just be a good XYZ employee because I work for this company. I have to also contribute and make myself what I believe my identity is.
Yeah, gosh, well, man, you can go down this road. Like, how often do you see people name drop, right? Well, yeah, no, like I know a guy who's a Navy SEAL, and so I'm a pretty great guy because I know a guy who's a Navy SEAL. Right. Wait, listen, because that guy's a Navy SEAL, that doesn't make you one, right? I know him, like he's a really good friend of mine, and I know everything he does, so no, you're not a Navy SEAL. Yeah, you're just the loser. All right. So there's a lot of things that come into play with that, but when we think about like our identity, let's dig into this a little bit more. Like we can't dismiss some things that are just real. And those are some things we have no control over. Your God-given abilities, okay? That's why we call them God-given abilities. You had nothing to do with them, whether you have good athletic talents, whether you have an incredible brain on you or a numbers mind, or you're a compassionate person, or you're outgoing. Like, listen, dude, you didn't create you, okay? So this is kind of in your DNA, and it was given to you. Other things, like you didn't get to choose your family, right? Like you didn't get to choose your dad. If you had a dad who was harsh and abusive and rough, and he called you names or called you out and created pictures in your head that maybe were not all that accurate, man, like, sorry, you didn't get to choose that. You didn't choose the country you were born in, most of us, all right? Like we didn't, most of us were not on the immigration boat. We were born here, okay?
Right.
We don't choose our siblings. Oh, man, could I like to change some of that one around? No, I love my siblings. But yeah, that you grew up with those people, okay? So those are things that were kind of set in, and whether you liked it or not, they were influencing your identity without you having a whole lot of say.
Right, and I think those feed right into what we were talking about, before those questions, the positive and the negative mindsets. Some of those things, who your parents are. If you had a childhood that was just beat you down, right, and you had a dad who was abusive, or you had parents who were abusive, or if you were in an abusive relationship, like those things that we can't determine. We had the God-given abilities, kind of our DNA. Man, sometimes those can create negative, identity factors in your mind that kind of really get played out throughout, your entire life. And it's kind of hopefully, in a roundabout way we're going to get to, but this idea of taking some of those negative mindsets that you identify as, and man, let's see what we can do to change them into more productive, more positive mindsets.
Yeah, like John Eldridge in Wild at Heart talks about the father's wound. And every boy has a father's wound, okay? And so some of them might be a scratch, some of them might be a full-out blown amputation, okay? But every one of us has a father wound. And so part of that is, you didn't get to choose your daddy, okay?
Yep.
But you do get to choose what you do with that. And I think that's really important, that if you've identified at a young age, because maybe dad influenced you or mom or whoever in a certain way, like your identity is built in a cycle. We're going to talk about the identity cycle here. And it's like, it's up to me to throw the brakes on in that cycle, but I have to first become aware. So anyway, that's a huge thing. I think it's important too that when we see our God-given abilities, and then we see experiences, and they start to come together, okay? So they start to feed each other. Like I say I'm a good baseball player, and then I go out and I have experiences, and I prove basically to myself and others that I am, and so it starts to move. And then I have to also understand, well, what about the little tweaks? What happens in the middle? Well, I'm driven by pain and pleasure. And if I call myself a good baseball player, and then I go out and perform well on the field, and then everybody claps for me, all right, so I get rewarded, like that's a pleasure thing that makes me say, oh, I want to do this more, okay? And so the other thing would be, if I go out on the field and I make an error and everybody boos me, I am going to have to do something with that. Am I going to go double down and work out harder so I don't make that error anymore? So the pain and pleasure constantly will tweak how I am going to go about my identity building or destruction.
Yeah. Well, as we kind of, talk about, get into this identity cycle, and kind of the, you again, similar to what you're saying, putting in the work to get the applause, man, I think a good place to be when it comes to this identity, which I kind of talked about early in, at the beginning of the show, man, whatever we're doing, it has to be this constant work in progress. We always have to be working towards changing, and molding, and especially now for you guys out there that are dads, golly, man, you want to talk about identity and the work in progress that's going to be done through your kids, throughout your kids' life, and they're going to be seeking things to identify as, and we have to be kind of that steadfast thing in their life that continues to help them work through this whole thing as trying to identify whatever. And I think the same could be said about us, man. Just constantly doing this work in progress. I'll be the first to admit right now I'm going through kind of a little bit of a change in my identity because I'm searching and kind of seeking to see where I want to land my feet when it comes to my profession. And man, it's hard because for the last almost 10 years now, I've identified as a Dayton fireman, and I take a great deal of pride in that. And I'm quickly realizing God's like, wait a second, like, is this what you truly identify at? Like, is this what's important to you? Because if it is, then stay here. You're good, right? So this whole idea of work in progress, I think, is something. Hopefully, you guys can all kind of realize that we need to constantly be, redefining and different and molding ourselves to hopefully make that positive mindset when it comes to our identity.
Yeah, well, and that, like, that identity. If I hang my hat completely on that identity, I can't dismiss how that identity can influence or impact other things that I'm trying to identify as.
Yep.
If I'm trying to be a great fireman, but it impacts my ability to be a great husband, then I go, okay, wait, listen, this is what's the trade-off here?
Yep.
And so I have to prioritize what my identity is going to be. So they definitely influence each other, and this is where we start to get into a point. So kind of like, here's the kicker here. You have everything comes at a cost, and I have to start to say, okay, wait, what's it going to cost me to maintain or keep this identity? And like we were talking before we recorded, like, how much extra work do you think somebody like Tom Brady has to put in? What is he now, 43?
Is he? I thought he was 45. Yeah,
I don't know. He's like
he's mid-40s.
He's 100 years old or something. And so, I mean, the idea here is like, he has to do things totally different than when he was in his 20s.
Yeah.
And so you get to this point where you go, okay, wait, it's taking me a whole lot of extra time or a lot of extra work or a lot of extra pain. And you have to go through a cost-benefit analysis of, you know what, it's time for me to retire. I've identified as a great football player all these years, and this has been my life, and it's been a good life for me, but man, it's costing me so much now. I don't think I can continue to maintain it and still be who I am.
Yeah.
Okay. And we oftentimes see in pro athletes, guys go way beyond what they should go into their before they should retire.
And then the flip side of that, we see guys who do 1 or 2 years and they're like, man, this is I just can't continue on this path.
Yeah, it's costing me a lot. Yeah.
So let's kind of move towards, similar to at the very beginning of the show, we talked about, do you identify as a winner or do you identify as a loser, kind of the two sides of the spectrum. Let's get into this idea of where your mindset is when you identify. So if you kind of, have asked some of these questions to yourself, going through that beginning, kind of where you're at now. So you identify as a winner. Some of the questions that kind of, help identify you or help kind of mold this identity of you being what you would consider to be a winner, and I think hopefully you'll hear the different tone in a lot of these questions when we talk about winners versus losers. And again, those are kind of a broad term. Not saying like you're a loser, bro, but like if you, as we start asking some of these different questions, I think you'll really hear the tone, and it really kind of, it's essentially the victim mentality versus like, I'm not going to allow this to own me, right? And kind of the winner versus losers. But the first one is when it comes to this idea of identity, man, what is the actual problem? What is the problem that's going on in my life? What are things that I can do to fix those actual problems?
Yeah. So the idea here is, I mean, we could take this in all kinds of different categories, but if my identity is it a winner thing or am I approaching it from the loser aspect?
Right.
So the idea, that first thing you're talking about, like, is if I function from a winner development for identity, if that's like, I want to be a winner, okay, this is where I want to strive to be. It's kind of an undertone that's going to build a better identity. Then I have to be asking what is the actual problem, okay? But I think it's important to see what the opposite of that would be. Well, why is this happening to me? Okay, so you've sort of identified a problem, but you're taking it as, why is this happening to me? And let's just go back to your firehouse thing. Like, what is the actual problem versus why am I in all this conflict?
Yeah.
Why? Well, get over the why and say, what's the problem? What am I having to identify?
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think kind of the different sides of the equation, the different questions.
Whether I'm going to build a winning identity or
Yes.
whether I'm going to fall into a losing identity, and I
Yep.
think that's whether I don't care whether you're talking about good husband, bad husband, you're talking about good baseball player, bad baseball player. It doesn't matter, but you will build these based off of how your brain goes about building identity.
Yep.
Whether you have kind of a winner mindset or a loser mindset.
Yep.
Okay. How about this next one? The idea of, okay, so you have identified the problem. So, what is the problem? But what can I do about it? What can I do about it?
Yep. Well, don't you think that is a great question for some of the stuff we talked about earlier with the idea of your God-given things that you can't change. So you grew up in a home that was not healthy. You grew up in an environment that was not building you up and making you feel like you were worth something. Okay, that sucks. Like,
Yeah.
I feel you, man. That is terrible that you had to deal with that. But what can you actually do about it now? Now that you're an adult, now that you are a grown man, now that you're raising your own kids, what can you do about it to make sure that you don't repeat that vicious cycle?
Yeah. Or the loser side of that would be, well, this is just where I'm at. These are the cards I was dealt.
Yep.
I'll just have to deal with it. Okay. And so that's a stuck. I am stuck.
Yep.
And so when you're stuck, you have to be rescued,
Yep.
right? And so a rescuer is an outside identity, right?
Yep.
It's an outside entity. It's going to come in and save you. And so it doesn't mean we don't ever need rescued. There are times when we need rescued.
Yep.
But for the most part, we have a whole lot more influence over our identity. And so the question is, well, what can I do about it?
Yep. So then the other one is, the winner mentality or winner, mindset when it comes to identifying yourself is, what can I learn from this? And then the flip side of that would be, God, I have no idea what to do about this.
Yeah.
I'm not sure kind of where I'm at in this. And again, kind of the woe is me mentality.
I'm thinking of my kids right now. I'm thinking of my kid where I'm like, dude, like, what are you going to do about this? I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know. And you're like, no, come on, like, give me something. Give me something. What can you do about it? I don't know. and again, that's a habit that people get into because they'd rather you rescue them because it takes less energy out of them. Remember, like, that's one of the things that starts to short circuit me. When it takes so much energy out of me, I just bail. I'm like, forget it. I'm not going to do this. So the idea here is, what are you going to do about it versus, I don't know what I can do about this.
Yep. So let's get into, let's talk about some things that you can do to change your identity and your outcome. So you kind of identified three. See that? Like,
I identify
you identified
within the
three.
identity.
Yeah.
Keep identity in.
What are kind of diving into? Let's talk about three of the things that you can kind of change in your identity, to really affect your outcome.
The very first thing that we have to do, and this is an ongoing, remember, we are a work in progress.
Yeah.
And so this becomes what we talk about in other shows. We've talked about the idea of you got to watch game film. You've got to watch game film. You've got to go back and you actually have to see where you said your identity was a certain thing, but then the fruit of it was not what you said it would be. And so you have to become self-aware, okay? That's the game film watching. I have to be able to be honest and say, yeah, you know what? Like, I've always said this about, like, man, I've always thought of myself as a good dad. But the proof is my kids don't even like me. They don't even want to be in a relationship with me. Oh, well, then, okay, I have to be able to say that.
Yeah.
So becoming self-aware, catching yourself before others have to catch you.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be cool if I said, I'm starting to realize maybe I'm not the dad that I think I am, versus my teenage kid saying, you're a terrible dad. Okay? If my kid has to call me out, can you imagine how that's going to feel? Versus if I go, you know what, I'm catching it before you catch it.
Yeah.
So it's really, really important that we can train ourselves to catch our short-sightedness before somebody else has to.
Yep, I think that's just the owning that part of that.
Yeah.
And again, just in my world in the fire service, man, if you're going to sit there and say you're a good fireman solely because you work for the city of Dayton, how long is that going to take you until how many fires you've gone on? You've made so many mistakes and not willing to go back to the drawing board, not willing to go back to the game film. Kind of a point on this, just because this is Strong Date, I think we should ask these, man. If when we ask the question of who are you, so identify yourself. If some of the first things you say is I'm a great coworker, I'm a really good businessman, whatever, and then third or fourth and fifth down the line is I'm a good father, man, I think along with identifying who you are, I think there's got to be a priority list when it comes to that. Are you a good follower of Christ? Are you trying to live your life similar to Christ? We're all going to fail in that, but man, I just think some self-awareness in the sense of, man, there's got to be priorities when it comes to identifying as well.
Yeah, there's a hierarchy. Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, and I mean, that's really super important, especially because it's going to tell you where you're going to actually be allocating resources and energy.
Yes.
If I say that this is my true identity of a follower in Christ, then why am I going to church, 2 times a year?
Yep.
Why am I not even knowing where my Bible is?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Well, so you're really not. You're just a poser.
Yep.
Okay. So the second thing you do is, like, if you really want to change your identity and the outcomes, the experiences, then you got to become very aware, and you got to watch your words. You got to watch your words. What is your pattern of word use? Okay. So like some negatives that you will find yourself doing are when you say stuff like, I have to, I can't, I should, or I should not. All right, I must not. This can't be done. It's impossible. Like, if these are the kinds of words that you typically say, like sometimes we refer to somebody as like they're a naysayer, so they're always, and it just naturally comes out of their mouth. Oh, that probably won't work, or today's going to be another train wreck.
Yeah.
If those are things that come out of your mouth frequently, you got to catch them. You got to watch what you're saying. Like, well, why is my brain down that road? And because that's impacting not just your identity, but then the type of experience that you're going to have.
Yep. So as we move to kind of the third one of man, I think this is really, really important. This idea of almost asking like a better question, or I think a better way of asking a follow-up question.
Yeah.
We just talked about, kind of your words matter and the way in which you're saying things, and the questions you're kind of asking yourself, man, start asking some better follow-up. So instead of just saying, man, I can't do it, and then you stop there. Man, ask that follow-up question. So what is stopping me? What are the obstacles? What are the hurdles that I need to tackle in order to change my mindset? So, man, I'm down in the dumps right now. I don't have a job. I'm unemployed. If you stop there, then yes, you're identifying in that quote unquote loser side of things, right?
Yeah.
So let's get out of that mentality. What can you do right now to get out of that vicious cycle of okay, woe is me. I'm going to sit on the couch and be lazy all day. So what is stopping you from getting that job if that's where you find yourself?
Yeah. And so then that kind of would lead to the next thing of like, well, I have to do this, or I should do this. Well, be able to ask yourself the question, well, what will happen if I don't do it? What will happen? So a little bit of insight and foresight to be able to ask the question, what's the outcome going to be? And then you do this again. You do the cost analysis. All right, well, if I don't do this, this is where it's going to lead me. Maybe I stay stuck in the hole or whatever. But if I do it, maybe it gives me the opportunity. So you have to be able to say, what's going to happen? Look out there a little bit and weigh it out.
Yeah, I like it. I think this next one, I shouldn't or I must not. Man, again, this maybe goes back to the risk taker side of things we were talking about. I think it is a positive thing. Well, what the heck is going to happen to you if you do? I can't apply for that job. I shouldn't do that. It's going to require so much more effort from me. Well, what the heck? Why not? Let's try and see what will happen if you do apply for that job. What will happen, to you if you invest more time into your kids? Man, what will happen? And I think there's a great follow-up kind of ideas and thoughts and questions you should be asking yourself, because I think it's going to bring you kind of out of that negative mindset and kind of into that positive mindset, which can ultimately hopefully change, that those negative identity factors that sometimes we find ourselves in.
Yeah. The next area is that idea of allowing who, or being aware of who you're allowing to influence what you can and can't do. Okay. You'll hear general terms like, well, they say that you can't do that. Well, they say that that's probably not going to work. And so the question has to be is, who's they? According to who?
Yep.
Oh, you're never going to be successful. Well, according to who? You're never going to amount to anything. Right? I had a coach tell me one time, you're never going to amount to anything. And so you have to say, well, according to who? What gave them the authority that you are now placing at such a huge influencer in your life? All right, and you have to question those things. According to who? Like, why am I losing? I've got to grab hold of that and say, I am the primary influencer of my identity. I can't let other people do that.
Yep. Yeah. We kind of as we're closing this out, man, I think again, we've brought it up before, man, when it comes to this idea of being, identifying yourself as whatever you kind of identify yourself in your life, man, I would just say the first thing that hopefully we are faith-based here. We believe your identity always needs to be founded in Christ. Mm-hmm. That you need to identify and understand that regardless of what this world tells you are, sometimes regardless of what you tell yourself are, you are worthy in the eyes of God. God made you. That's who you should first and foremost identify as a child of God, as someone. And again, that sounds all hunky-dory sometimes, and it sounds very nice to say, but man, start believing in that. You want to start changing your mindset in what you identify as. Man, open up the Bible. Mm-hmm. Start looking at what God talks and says about who you are and how valuable you are. Because I think a lot of times this idea of identifying comes down to the sole fact of you don't value who you are, or you don't think other people value. Man, I promise you, Christ values you.
Yeah. I mean, I know it sounds cliche, but you are perfectly and wonderfully made. The idea that, we try to follow other identities of what perfect looks like. And the idea here is like, listen, you are the only you, all right? Mm-hmm. You come with your own set of gifts and talents, and realizing that came from God's creation. Mm-hmm. So now how do I work to be the hands and feet of God? I think it's so important for us to back off of all of the expectations that the world puts on us in terms of identity, what a real man looks like,
Yeah.
And we really need to say, well, listen, this is what I have. I don't have the gifts that this guy has, so why do I keep envying what he has? I need to take the gifts I have and see how I serve with those gifts. So I think that's a great point that you bring up.
Yep. All right.
So your challenge. Have some thought time on how you have been identifying. What would you say about yourself?
Yep.
If I said, so who are you? Would you call yourself by a certain occupation you do? Would you call yourself by a position you hold in the home, whether husband, father, provider, whatever it is? But then actually start to go and see whether you would apply a winner or loser statement behind that in general. Like, are you doing that well? All right. Or are you falling short? And so the idea here is now I have to look at the fruit. I have to look at what my actual experiences are. So I would just challenge all you guys to go out there and first off, Satan wants you to have conflict in your identity and your experiences. He wants you to experience this tension, and because if it just keeps beating you down, eventually you'll get these wonderful things. Joke here, okay? I'm joking.
Sarcasm.
Wonderful things called anxiety, depression, anger. All right. They will start to haunt you. And so we have to get experiences and identity matching for us to really feel like we're in a good place.
Yep. So good. Yeah, guys, I hope, something that we talked about kind of sparked some interest in what you're going on in your life, where you're at, man. We just always continue to ask you guys to go out there and share our shows, ask you guys to continue to support us and whatever that looks like for you. We don't typically get a lot of comments in the YouTube thing, but man, put something in there. Like what are some of the things you identify identify as. We would love to hear from you guys out there. I know as a man, sometimes it's hard to kind of express your feelings and what you're kind of going through. But man, I know for sure Merle, Linda with Rock Solid Families would love to hear about it. I think it'd be cool just to get some feedback on what you guys are going through. We keep putting shows out there. We're doing it because we think it's got some value. Hopefully you're finding the same value that we see in putting these shows out. Reach out to us. We'd love to come alongside you and do life with you.
Yeah. So again, we want to thank our sponsors. We want to thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions and Quality Auto Mart. And so
located in Batesville, Indiana.
Indiana. We want to thank those guys. We do want to thank all of our folks that continue to support our messaging and those 5-star ratings and all that stuff. So thank you all. And you know what? Let's sign out of this and let's go work on our identity today.
I like it. Go out there and be some strong dads.
You're just like a unicorn. You're just a unicorn, that's all. Casey's is a premier garden center and gift shop located in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Casey's offers a wide selection of plants, landscaping materials, home and garden decor, and gifts for every occasion. Casey's is committed to providing exceptional service, a unique shopping experience, and value to every customer. Stop in and see what makes Casey's so unique. Located at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana, or call 812-537-3800. Let Casey's help you add beauty to your home.